The blood is not oozing. It's pulsing bright red in a rhythmic jet that matches the beat of a heart that is currently emptying its entire tank onto the floor. You grab the tourniquet. You cinch the strap. You twist the windlass until the bleeding stops. The casualty is still screaming, which means you did something right, but there is a 60% chance you put that tourniquet on the wrong limb. Not the left leg instead of the right, the wrong limb. And while you were winning a battle against a secondary bleed, the hidden arterial fountain that is actually the kill shot just kept pumping. Most preppers train the application. They never train the one question that decides which limb gets the strap first. Subscribe so you never miss this. Stay for the final check. The one that takes 5 seconds and reveals the bleed you were about to ignore. The systemic lie sold by every tactical course is that a tourniquet solves an arterial bleed. It does. The lie is that the bleed announces itself with a fire hose spray you can't miss. In a chaotic dark room, with a victim screaming in clothes-soaked black, the primary lethal bleed is often silent, hidden, and on a completely different limb than the one that's soaking your shirt. The 60% failure rate isn't about the windlass, it's about target selection. The strap works on the limb you choose. Pick the wrong priority, and the casualty dies with a perfectly applied tourniquet on a wound that was never going to kill them fast. Number 1. The first limb bias. You enter the room. The casualty is clutching their forearm, and blood is streaming through their fingers. Your eyes lock onto that arm. You tourniquet the forearm. You feel the rush of action. You missed the femoral artery pumping into their thigh beneath a flap of torn pants. The loudest bleed is rarely the deepest. A radial artery laceration sprays dramatically because it's under high pressure near the surface. A femoral artery, buried deep in the muscle of the thigh, often bleeds inward, filling the fascial compartments with liters of blood before it ever seeps through the skin. The first limb you see is the first limb you treat. That instinct is the 60% failure. Most people never train to scan the entire body systematically before touching a single strap. You will touch the tourniquet, then freeze your hands, and run your eyes from groin to toes, armpit to fingertips, in a deliberate sweep that ignores the screaming. The limb that is killing them is not the one they're holding. It's the one that's quiet. Number 2, the high and tight betrayal. The doctrine says high and tight, as close to the torso as anatomy allows. But some preppers, in the panic, put the tourniquet 2 inches above the wound. The wound is on the calf. They strap the knee. The anterior tibial artery dives deep behind the tibia bone, protected by the fibula. A tourniquet below the knee cannot compress that deep vessel against the bone because the 2 bones shield it. You need to go above the knee, where the single femur provides a single uncompressible surface. The same applies to the forearm. The radial and ulnar arteries are protected by the radius and ulna bones. A tourniquet on the forearm crushes muscle, but often leaves the deep artery pulsing. You must go above the elbow, the humerus, where the brachial artery runs close to a single bone. High and tight means the upper third of the limb, not the middle, not just above the wound, the armpit crease, the groin, the highest possible anchor. Most people see the wound and place the strap nearby because it feels more precise. Precision kills. Proximity to the bleed is not the goal. Proximity to the torso is the goal. Number 3. The single tourniquet fallacy. You apply one tourniquet, the bleeding stops. You call it done. But a large adult thigh, especially with a high-volume femoral bleed, often requires 2 tourniquets stacked side by side to achieve full occlusion. The muscle mass is too dense for a single windlass to compress completely. You twist the first one to the limit. The bright red slows to a dark ooze, and you think you have a seal. You have a partial occlusion. The dark ooze is still a major vein leaking, and the artery is still feeding it slowly. The casualty bleeds out, just over 30 minutes instead of 3. Most people feel the windlass resistance and assume the artery is flat. You will carry a second tourniquet and place it directly above the first, if the limb is thick, if the casualty is large, or if any dark blood continues to seep. 2 tourniquets are not excessive. They are the standard of care for a large adult femoral wound. The second strap is not a backup. It's the second half of the first attempt. Number 4. The junctional blind spot. The wound is at the very top of the thigh, where the leg meets the groin. The wound is in the armpit, at the shoulder joint. A tourniquet cannot be placed there. The anatomy has no cylinder to compress. Most people try anyway, cinching a strap across the pelvis or the shoulder, and it slips off, and the casualty bleeds out while they fumble. A junctional wound requires a packed hemostatic gauze and direct pressure, not a tourniquet. The strap is the wrong tool for the job, but panic reaches for what it knows. You will classify every wound into limb or junctional before you touch a tourniquet. If the bleed is above the inguinal crease or above the axilla, the tourniquet stays in the pouch. Your hands go to the gauze. Your knee goes to the groin. Your body weight becomes the first clamp. Knowing when not to use the strap is just as critical as knowing how to twist it. The blind spot is a death trap for the rigid mind. Number 5. The failure to expose. The casualty is wearing jeans, a jacket, a thick flannel. The blood is soaking through, and you apply the tourniquet directly over the clothing. The strap cinches down. It feels tight, but the fabric bunched underneath is absorbing the compression. The artery slips through a fold. The casualty continues to bleed beneath the denim, and you cannot see the subtle dark rebloom of blood because the clothes are already saturated. A tourniquet requires bare skin. You cannot palpate a pulse, confirm occlusion, or see the wound under layers. Most people fear exposing the casualty because it takes time and feels invasive. You will cut the pants, leg, or the sleeve, from hem to wound without hesitation. The seconds spent exposing the limb are not a delay. They are the difference between a strap that presses on fabric and a strap that presses on a vessel. If you cannot see the skin, you are guessing. Tourniquets do not work on guesses. The final check, the distal pulse. You've applied the tourniquet. The bleeding has stopped. You now check for a distal pulse, the ankle on a leg wound, the wrist on an arm wound. Press 2 fingers below the tourniquet and feel for a pulse. If a pulse is still present, even faintly, the tourniquet is not occluding the artery. Tighten it further. Add a second tourniquet. Do not declare success until the pulse is gone. This 5-second check catches the 60% failure rate before the failure becomes a funeral. Most people never check the distal pulse. They see the bleeding slow, they hear the casualties breathing, and they move on to the next crisis. The quiet pulse beneath their fingers is the real outcome. Absence of pulse is proof. Presence of pulse is a lie. The strap is telling you. Here's the reality: the tourniquet pouch does not come with. The strap is a simple machine. It occludes a cylinder. It works on the limb you choose, in the location you place it, with the tension you apply. The machine is flawless. The human operator is the 60% variable. First, limb bias, placing it too low, using one when 2 are needed, applying it to a junctional wound that cannot be compressed, applying it over clothing, and failing to check the pulse that whispers you are not done. Most preppers drill the windlass 100 times on a bare plastic mannequin thigh under bright light. They never train the chaotic scan of a clothed, screaming, multi-wound casualty in the dark. You will drill the scan, you will touch the tourniquet, then freeze your hands and run your eyes from groin to toes, armpit to fingers, finding the quiet wound before the loud one. The strap is not the miracle. The triage is the miracle. Choose the right limb first, and the strap does the rest. Now drop a comment and tell me this. When you practice tourniquet application, how many wounds did you scan before you place the strap? 1. 2. Did you check for a distal pulse? Did you place it on the upper third of the limb or just above the wound? Write your honest answer. Then go run a drill on a rolled up towel with a partner in the dark and find the bleed you weren't looking for. And in the next video, we are moving from the limb to the junction. How to pack a groin wound with nothing but a roll of gauze, a knee, and the body weight that stops the bleed when a tourniquet cannot reach. I'll see you there.